this is a crime scene. Why don't you pretend like you know what you're doing?
All right, Patrick Klepek, let's talk about part 2 of True Detective Night Country. Obviously, we're basically committed to covering this show, so I think we both think it's worth watching. I guess I'm going to start by asking you, what stuck out to you about this episode? And let me read the plot summary. As Danvers and Pryor learn more about Salal and find an unlikely location for the physical evidence, Captain Connolly threatens to move the case to Anchorage. Later, Navarro and Danvers find a connection between one of the Salal men and Annie. End quote. Annie, of course, being the activist that was killed earlier. But there is now a connection. I think Annie's boyfriend, right, or lover, was one of the scientists that disappeared and also had this like strange tattoo on his chest. And so there is definitely a connection between the cases now. But yeah, Patrick Klepek, what stuck out to you about True Detective Night Country Part 2?
Once again, it has a lot of really just compelling imagery. Obviously, I think it might have been maybe not impossible, but even if you aren't watching the show, you've probably seen the term corpsicle like floating around this week.
Corpsicle, I think.
Corpsicle, yeah. Correct. Corpsicle. Well, there are a lot of cops, and I suppose they might be cold, so a corpsicle could also exist.
You're referring to the fact that at the end of last episode, they found a bunch of the scientists frozen into a block of ice that they then cut out and dragged to the town and had it defrosted at the local town ice rink.
Incredible,
and it's an incredible piece of like set design, or I don't know what it's a prop, a set. I don't know what the technical term is, but the design of it is horrifying. It looks fairly convincing. It's unlike anything you've seen on television before. It's just like the weirdest, bizarre, most macabre thing. So yeah, amazing. Right?
I would have loved to have been in the room where that was pitched, and then like, how are we going to build this? But I think it's a solid episode. I'm glad that sort of by the conclusion of it, we are getting some interesting intersections of characters, things that I was a little worried might get dragged out a little further into the season, because I'd rather certain characters just start kind of overlapping more quickly than not. I will say I'm a little worried every time the spiral shows up. I believe that Lopez has described this show as a dark mirror image of the first season. I do have a little bit of worry of how far that's going to be taken in terms of reference, like how much of this is a kind of fan sequel to the first one to make good on certain things that did or didn't occur in the first season of True Detective. I don't know. We'll have 4 more episodes to find that out. But I am low key worried, mostly because they're beginning to invoke a bunch of things in regards to supernatural-esque elements that are increasingly feel like they may not be supernatural-esque and just supernatural. And the moment you leave the firm grounding of the cold ground in Alaska, you've got to land that plane. And I'm hoping the show is going to be able to do that. I'm all the way along for the ride. I think the characters are compelling enough that I'm willing to forgive some messiness in terms of like explanation and things like that. And it's too early to prejudge that. But I will say it's like, okay, the show is asking me to leap because the show is also going to leap. And I am just profoundly curious to see where it chooses to take those questions and turn those into answers as we move forward. But love the area, love the environment, love the characters. And I think there's enough advancement of the mystery in this episode to make me deeply interested in what happens next.
Well, speaking of season 1, there was a theory that cropped up on the internet that Travis might be related to Rusty Cole from the first season of the show. That theory is basically confirmed this episode when the character of Travis is given a last name of Cole. In season 1, Rusty Cole says that his father, Travis, moved his family to Alaska when he was a child, and that he had, quote, some pretty fucking strange ideas, end quote. And so this seems to be a confirmation that the woman that I think it's Rose was with, right? Was Travis, and who apparently got cancer and walked out into the elements and succumbed to the cold rather than be taken by his own diseases. So, anyway, an interesting tie-in to the first season of the show. A couple things I want to point out about this episode. First of all, in the first scene of the episode, all the corpsicle stuff is very funny. They like rip someone's arm off by accident, which is never discussed again. I would think that would be like if that happened in real life, that would be like a big deal that they like tampered with the crime scene that way.
Yeah.
But then somebody, one of the scientists, Lund, starts screaming. Like he seems to be alive, and that was Patrick, you mentioned some big moment at the beginning of the next episode, and to me, that was it. He starts screaming. We later find out that he is in a induced coma, about to have surgery to amputate a leg. Now, I don't know about you, Patrick Klepek, but if it was me discovering this guy, Dr. Lund, was still alive, I would be just waiting by Lund's hospital room the whole fucking time. Like that would be the rest of my week. Would just be waiting by Lund's thing and the show brushes past it so quickly. I thought, oh, did I like mishear that? Like, is that guy actually alive, or was that a dream sequence or something? But no, I think Lund is still potentially alive. At the end of the episode, Navarro starts counting the dead people, and she's like, wait, there's a guy that's still alive. And I'm like, wasn't there another guy that's still alive that is in a coma? Like, that was confusing to me, but I'm pretty sure at the end of the episode, she's saying that there is a character that is still alive. I want to say it's Chris, right? And then separately, Lund is still alive. So there's potentially two characters that are still alive. So anyway, that was weird. Clark, I think, is the character's name. Clark.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So Raymond Clark. So anyway, that was just a weird moment that I wanted to mention. The other thing that I wanted to call out is I really admire how this show is making Jodie Foster into just a raging asshole. Like,
oh, I love this part of the show.
Jodie Foster, by the way, an actor who I have a great deal of affection for. Like, in most things, she plays a very sympathetic character, right? Like, in most of the things I have seen her in my life, Jodie Foster is the person you want to root for, is the one you relate to the most, maybe the audience surrogate. In this show, she is a raging asshole. Like, everyone fucking hates this person. And as far as you can tell, they are right to hate her. Like, she has done terrible things. She has slept with many people, including, the ex-husband of the person that owns the ice rink, I should say. And this teacher whose class she just barges into. It's just like, I think that's a different guy than the ex-husband person.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just like, wow. And she seems to be stuck in this downward spiral where she can't like extricate herself from this descent of her character. And it's fascinating to watch, and it's also kind of a huge bummer. Patrick Klepek, what part of this character resonates with you?
Well, frankly, it's exactly as you've put it. It's the commitment to making her, at least at this stage in the game, right? Like, I suspect there are layers to this character that we'll get access to as the show goes on, but a real commitment to just reinforcing over and over how deeply unlikable he is. Because it would be very easy because of the small town, like, it's just her direct family. Like, it's just this person. It's like at every step, at every turn, at every moment where she could choose, even in a moment where like she shows up and is around a child and is sort of warm with the child for a moment, immediately when confronted about a decision she'd made, just chooses to be the most obnoxious, meanest person possible, culminating in a sequence where she's yelling like at a grandmother in like the horribly offensive, like deeply upsetting ways, like where I was not even expecting the character to like the character presents as grumpy, disagreeable. I think that's kind of where you end up with it by the end of the first episode. And episode 2 just really commits to like, no, like, yes, would everyone up here probably be kind of grumpy and kind of miserable, especially during the periods where there's no sun? Sure, that's going to take a toll on the human body and the human psyche, and people are going to be in a bad place potentially. but she chooses to go the extra mile. Like, she is
Right.
just a genuinely miserable person that then deploys that misery as a weapon on other
Yeah.
people.
And she's not tortured about it either. Like a lot of people in these kinds of shows, they're assholes, but they have this feeling of, oh, like I feel bad on this way. She doesn't seem to experience much remorse, at least
No.
at this stage. Maybe that's going to change over time. Anyway, yeah. So really amazing depiction of this character by Jodie Foster, and somehow she has won even more of my heart after playing one of the worst, least likable characters ever that she's ever played. Couple of other things to mention. There is a kind of creepy ass shit in this episode, Patrick Klepek. They go to this trailer that has a freaking doll and whatever. Like, it's this weird, creepy doll with all this stuff hanging, very Carcosa-esque, from season 1. But you gotta have. I was impressed that we got not only one but two major creepy elements this episode: the corpsicle and this trailer that looks like they did ritualistic murders in it before.
Well, then also there's the brief cell phone footage where we see someone doing a classic horror pose of like looking
well, that
away.
Was we saw that in the first episode. That we saw the cell phone version of something that we saw in the first episode.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
but like multiple sequences that are leaning into the scares in a way that I'm very much enjoying.
And then a couple of other hints. We see Danvers and Navarro kind of re-team up. Danvers says to Navarro, "Hey, you're back on the case. Like, we're working together and we're going to solve this, and then we're done." Couple of interesting things there. They refer to this thing called the Wheeler thing. We don't know what that's going to be, but I assume that will be explained. Also, Danvers seems to know the details of Navarro's apartment really well. Like,
where do the cans go?
Where are the cans? Where'd you move the cans, or whatever? And it's like, I think there's an open question about what the nature of their relationship really was back in the day. So I think we'll find out more about that. But yeah, the only other thing I want to mention is there's like this big but we also see Danvers do like actual detective work. They lay out all the pictures. Very high quality printer they seem to have up there in NS Alaska. And like she's walking through, what are the questions you should be asking, and talking through, I think Pryor is the kid's name, right? And there's this big question of like, how is she going to let this kid down in this show, right? Or is she going to, right? And so I think that's one of the driving questions of the show for me is will she actually redeem herself, or is this going to be about her maybe recognizing that she can't be redeemed? And but basically that kid seems like a good kid, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him, so that's kind of where I'm at about it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Peter Pryor, by the way, is the young actor's name, played by Finn Bennett. His father is John Hawkes, who plays Captain Hank Pryor. So yeah.
Well, one thing I'll point out, and there's actually a through line between Echo and True Detective here, is love the normalizing of older people having sex. Let's talk about it. Let's show it on screen. I mean, I genuinely, like, there's one of the my favorite bits throughout Echo that I meant to mention before, but was reminded in this conversation, was like there are several extended scenes of flirting in Echo that were between people that we would consider the age of like a grandmother or grandfather, people in their 60s and 70s, and like I thought it was very like charming and cute, and like not something you see depicted as something other than being like, oh, that's kind of creepy that like old people want to have it's often
or like an
for
object of derision typically,
right? It's weird, or it's a joke that's like laughed at by younger audiences in the cast of the show or the movie. And I thought that was interesting and noteworthy. Obviously, like Jodie Foster still looks wonderful for her age. But I thought there were multiple
wonderful
times,
period. I'm gonna put that out there. Wonderful period.
But usually you'd have a show shy away from that because of her age, right? And I thought there were multiple instances in this episode alone where there were depictions, discussions of folks of certain types of certain age groups that we don't normally have discussions and encouraging of, like a very normal thing that those people are probably doing. And I thought that was an interesting and noteworthy part of the episode.
I am just, after watching True Detective Night Country episodes 1 and 2, I'm just looking for / hoping for a regular sex scene between two consenting adults where there's no weird ass power dynamic between them. It's just loving
It's not
people.
titillating, right? Like it is not
Yeah.
it is not the way True Detective season 1 essentially is like, we're gonna put Alexandria Daddario on the map by showing you her tits. And it's like that was like egregious. Like the fact that was a cultural moment was disgusting.
But I think I'm just saying, like the True Detective sex scenes have been messed up in some way or another. There's some weird power dynamic going on in every one of these things, and I'm just like, just give me some of the vanilla stuff that like isn't gonna upset me and haunt my dreams. That would be
just two
I would
people,
just two people who love each
normally
other,
having
normal
missionary sex,
Yep,
just the most boring stuff imaginable.
That's all. That's all. Just something where someone is not grossly uncomfortable during the entirety of the sex.
Well,
that would be great.
It's not depicted, but obviously, we have two queer characters like meeting off, sneaking off some young love that is happening, and so whatever they got up to is obviously not shown in the show.
Hopefully, their relationship will not be terrible, and that's.
I have a sense it's going to be ruined, though. Like there is there is a scene where they kind of catch each other's eye at the ice rink, and. Like, is it going to shock you if Danvers is like deeply homophobic? like that's not going to shock me with that character at all. I hope it's not the case, but wouldn't catch me by surprise if she looked down on that relationship for one reason or another.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about episode 2 of Night Country, Patrick Klepek?
No, looking forward to it. I feel like this episode ends in a really interesting place where the mystery is like really kicked off. Like it's part of, Echo was 5 episodes. Night Country is 6 episodes. There's something kind of exciting of a show that is pretty encapsulated and not bloated. Maybe you get to the end and wish, kind of like Echo, that either it spent its time differently or had more time to spend that time. But it gives the show a real sense of momentum. That's like, oh man, like episode 3 is going to be firmly halfway into the show. Like stuff is going to keep happening. And so maybe that'll help the show save itself from some of my worries about elongating questions of the supernatural and what's happening, just because the running time is as short as it is.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.